Hello, welcome to the hard reset. What just happened?
Exactly. We got all toasted up and was like, yeah, man, like screaming and stuff.
I know it was bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a shame too because a lot of the stores were just funny. It was all natural. That was the good part. It's just flowing.
Yeah, it just flowed, but I think the Jägermeister was flowing was the problem. I'm like screaming into the mic over here, trying to karate chop the mic floating around in front of me. And
yeah, something went wrong, that's for sure. But
yeah, it was
still good. I don't understand why the limiters aren't working because they should have kept the audio from crackling. So I might need to do some more research on that.
Yeah.
So I did have it to where when I first set them, I was about where you are in the same position here, and I was screaming into them and they would not crackle. Huh. So something's gone wrong because we definitely had them crackling.
You tripped on that cord over there and fucked up everything.
That's probably exactly.
You brought the whole system down, my friend.
Oh, I got us some new glasses also.
Oh yeah,
some new glasses to put beverages in.
Oh, nice.
They're pretty slick. I'll drag them out here eventually, but all right. So I want to hear about this airplane story.
Okay, it's a true story. It's with witnesses. My dad, my middle name is Rex, and my great uncle is Rex, and then my dad's name is Rex. So I'm like the third Rex or whatever you want to call it. But he's basically my great uncle Rex was my namesake.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy was wild. Like there's stories of like his family had ties with like Dillinger and stuff when they would come through in southern. They were from East Olytic, Indiana, which is like outside Bedford. And when like the Dillingers, people with Dillinger or whatever would come through, a lot of times they would hide out at some local farms that were around that area, and somehow they knew them. That's just like one of the stories. That's just like a precursor to some of the stuff, it's of knowing what kind of, he was just a crazy guy. Well, he was literally one of those guys that just, if he wanted to do something, he did it, and he didn't think about the consequences like at all of his actions.
I mean, that's a good way to live sometimes.
Well, he lived that way until the day he passed. He's wild. Well, he decides one day that he wants to buy an airplane, and he didn't have a pilot's license, but he decided for whatever reason, he wanted an airplane. Okay. So for whatever reason, somebody told him about this is, pre Craigslist / Facebook Marketplace or whatever.
Right.
So I'm not sure if he saw it in the newspaper or somebody, word of mouth or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So come to find out, it's in Terre Haute, Indiana, which is probably about an hour away if you're in a car. And my dad at the time, him and my dad, he loved my dad. They were like, running partners or something. They'd always get into stuff. Well, dad was, I think, maybe about 12 at the time. Okay. And so obviously didn't have a driver's license.
How old was your uncle?
I think my uncle was, he was still young then. I want to say he's probably in his late 20s.
Okay.
So he was still kind of a young man or whatever at the time.
Yeah.
And then my dad obviously was like 12 years old, but he was his great uncle, but would have been like a younger uncle, if you will. One
more silly question.
Yeah.
What was his experience with flying planes?
He had no experience.
Okay.
None.
Well, I asked that because I saw
literally none whatsoever. I think he had rode in a few. Like we had another, uncle, not his great uncle, but another uncle that married my aunt, was my dad's sister, was a pilot. And I think he'd flew him around a little bit. And it was like, he stayed at a Holiday Inn Express or something. So he thought, he could also fly it just because he rode in the airplane or something. He thought he understood the concept of, flying an airplane. Again, you can't make this stuff up. He decides that he wants to buy an airplane. So he gets in the car with my dad and they proceed to drive to Terre Haute. Gets there, he was like always one of those cash money guys, he was kind of a hustler, and he was like the art of negotiation or whatever. So it goes back and forth, and they settle on a price. He got it for, dirt cheap or whatever, pays the guy. And then obviously, the guy being of sound mind says, hey, you know what? Do you need me to, you need me to fly it from Terre Haute here and land it up here in Crawfordsville at the airport where, I can basically park it at the airport and then you can, go get pilots, or you can go get, training or whatever on it. And then your airplane will be like at a hangar at Crawfordsville and you can fly it out of Crawfordsville. And he's like, no, I'll fly it home. True story. And the guy basically said, hey, I can't let I can't in good conscience, conscious, however you say that, good conscience allow you to fly out of here in this plane. And he said, I'm sure there were some expletives because that's how my great uncle was. He probably, called him a couple of things, but basically the gist of the conversation was, and he was a big man, by the way, said, I paid for it. And somewhere along the lines of, I now own this from heaven to hell, and I'm going to fly this out of here. And for whatever reason, I don't know if there was like a threat of bodily harm or what that happened, but he allowed him to fly it out of there.
Oh dear.
So he tells my dad, hey, I'm not sure how to fly. I'm not sure what direction to fly home in order to get home. I don't even know how to get home. Like he couldn't even fly the plane. And he also didn't know how he was going to fly. Like he didn't know the directions to fly home. So he tells my dad, who is 12 years old, to get in the car and he will fly over the top of him and follow him up, 41 to 47 or whatever and fly home. So he was, he's fairly ingenious, right? So he now puts my dad at 12 years old in the car and it takes him a while. He finally takes off in the airplane. He manages to get it off the ground.
Hey, that's job done.
No concept of how he's going to land it, by the way. So they literally fly back from Terre Haute and he's following like treetop level. All the while, probably people are like calling the police and like, because there's this like plane flying over the top of 41 going up.
What's he have to do? Maybe circle around a few times occasionally or something?
Yeah, I think basically dad pulled out there in the car and, waited for him to take off or whatever. And apparently it took a while. Like he nearly crashed it trying to take off, like about ran into the wood line or whatever, trying to, take off with this guy's, from what I understand, it was like a private strip or whatever the guy had. So he flies out, he proceeds to fly, he manages to figure this thing out, keeps it from crashing, if you will. He follows dad for up 41 over to 47, flies basically treetop level with this airplane that he just bought. Then he manages to make it all the way up here to Crawfordsville and he lets dad pull in the car or whatever. Well, you see him, dad said he started circling the house or whatever. Well, then he got cocky and started to try to do barrel rolls with this like old Cessna or whatever, because he was like, showing off. Like, I think he told my dad to tell, his wife at the time, my great uncle's wife, Dee, to come out and, come out, look or whatever when he got there. And he's like flying around. Well, he starts showing off and like tipping the wing and like doing like all these barrel rolls. Like, he'd been flying for like 2.5 seconds. Apparently he was, some kind of, freaking, aerobatic, master or whatever.
Right.
Well, apparently like on about the third or fourth barrel roll, he swings it so hard that it literally rips the wing. It folds the wing. And the only saving grace is that he was so close to the ground when the wing ripped off that he basically nosedived into the ground and somehow manages to survive, completely destroys the airplane that he just bought. Kind of jacks him up a little bit. Obviously, he freaking crashed a plane into the backyard of the house or whatever over there. And from that point on, he was literally like a legend in the area for buying an airplane, not knowing how to fly it, managing to flying it all the way home, doing some kind of tricks, and then crashing it in the backyard of Whitlock over here, which is now we're close to where the jail is at. How ironic, right?
Well, at least he got a really good deal on it.
Yeah.
So hopefully wouldn't out too much.
Yeah. Well, he was just one of those like easy come, easy go.
Right.
Like he was not a big, he was not a big monetary guy or whatever. It was like all about fun. He was always like, even when I was growing up, and he was obviously quite a bit older When I was a kid, we would go to his house and he would always have something out there, some kind of crazy golf cart or go-kart or something that would have some other engine that he would stuff on there. Usually some other engine that shouldn't be on it. Horsepower for some, cheap tube, garage sale, go-kart. And then that motor wasn't good enough. So he'd pull that motor off of there and stick a 350 Banshee motor or something on it. And so it was always like highly unsafe if you rode on anything over there, because it was like cobbled together and it was like terrible welds. And like you would hammer on a motor or whatever and it would like flex because it was not welded properly. And it was like, everything you looked at could give you tetanus over there, But, he loved my dad and he loved me. And, he was just a crazy guy like that. That's how he lived his life. I mean, he was a wild man. He was a wild man. And he was like literally like one of the last outlaws that I've ever seen. He once got in an argument with his, I don't think he was ever married to her, but his kind of what do you call it? Like a common law wife, whatever. She was starting to yell at him at one point and he pulled a pistol out and shot the facing of the door beside where she was talking to him at. Or where she was yelling at him from the kitchen.
Nice.
I'm telling you, he's crazy, dude. He was a crazy man. He was like one of those weird old paranoid guys where he had like, guns stuffed in couches and chairs, and so it was always something, something he bought for $10 off of somebody that needed some money, some kind of pistol or whatever. And then he would like forget where all the guns are at because he would like hide them in couches.
Ooh, that sounds extra safe, especially around Thanksgiving time.
Yeah. He was
kids running around with guns.
I mean, he was like the epitome of, like old school, like outlaw. It was like a Wild West at his house. There was always something going on. It never failed to have some kind of good time while you're at, even though if it was like something extremely dangerous. Which usually was involving something extremely dangerous. Yeah. So, but yeah, that was my Uncle Big Rex. He was a wild man. So
awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that story with us.
Yeah.
Awesome.